Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid, and I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me on the evening or the noon newscast. Okay, you know we used to do this all the time, so I'm going to reintroduce doing some of the shows around this time or whatever, because I have a hectic schedule, I have a family, and I'm trying to get a few things done, and so sometimes in the evening conflicts with my schedule, but we're still going to be doing most of our shows in the evening time because most of our listeners are evening listeners. Okay. I thank each and every one of you who may join us in the chat. I appreciate everything. I think each and every one of you who are joining us on all of our platforms, be it Rumble, Twitter, Twitch, Locals, because we'll be streaming over at Locals right now also. Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey, all of you, and on our sister channel, the Red Pill Journals, and on this main platform, the Red Pill Diaries. Once again, thank you all for joining us on the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere across the globe. This is your platform for enlightenment, education, and elevation. And I'm your host, Rashid. Now let's get right into it. Today's show is titled American Empire. The NATO war machine must be fed. Now, before we go into the intricacies of NATO policy, I want to address a few things back home because I've seen a few comments and I've seen a few videos that were dealing with the Arizona GOP chairman, Jeff DeWitt, and the leaked audio showed him floating, a job for Carrie Lake. I think her name is Carrie Lake. I think for a Senate race. Now check it. I know thinking outside the box may be new to some of you guys. Okay, thinking outside the box may be new to some of you guys. But on this channel, we force you to think, and we provoke thought, and we show you different aspects of different situations. Okay, we don't just take the line that's commonly taken. We look at it from different angles so that you can see and understand what this is or what this could be. All right. So now I'm going to put in a couple keywords and we're going to address this in just a second because this has everything to do with empire. Remember that the empire is flailing, falling, and in total and utter chaos and decline. Remember that. That is one of the main things whenever you view news, whenever you view politics, and whenever you view geopolitics, always remember that the time that we are now in is a time of utter chaos, decline, and collapse of not just the American Republic, but the American empire and the Western world. So when a nation is in decline, when a republic is in decline, when an empire is in decline, and when a entire international order is in decline, some of the reasoning and some of the perspectives that they give can be suspect. Okay, can be suspect. So I want to advance a few things to you, and I'm not saying it is, and I'm not saying it's not, but it would be less than me to advance a school of thought outside of the normal thinking of this situation that takes place with the GOP congressman and with the woman running for the Senate. Okay, so hold on one second. I'm going to pull this up and we're going to address this, and hopefully we can see a different perspective. And I'm not, again, let me say this, I'm not, because I don't care one way or the other with U.S. politics. I don't care one way or the other with Western politics because it's inherently corrupt. And you must learn that you don't change the system because the system is inherently corrupt unless you go to the core. You can't remove a couple of people out of the system and think that you're changing the system. When it is inherent, that means it goes to the very core, the very DNA of something. And unless you go into that DNA and graft that out, it remains inherently corrupt. Okay? So I just put in a couple keywords. What were the keywords? Let me go back and see, and then I'll come right back to this. Congresswoman taped governor trying to bribe her. I'll put that in. And so I put that in, and CBS, I click on the first article that comes up at CBS News. I'm telling you how easy this is, okay? So the article is titled, I hate when they have these little pop-ups or whatever. I could put it on the screen, but you know how sometimes when you put certain things up there, it makes the screen lag or runs slower. So I didn't do it. I'm doing it on this other one. So it says Arizona GOP Chairman Jeff DeWitt resigns after leaked tape showed him floating a job for Kerry Lake to skip Senate race. Now, the first, and I'm reading this for the first time with you all, and we'll address this. And I'm showing you just how corrupt and in decline the system is, and how this is 1984 all over again. For those of you who know what I'm talking about, the book 1984, okay? Where what you see is not what you get, okay? Remember in that book, deception, chaos, right, and propaganda were a lot of the tools used to advance the policies of government, right? What you thought you saw, what you thought you heard, what you thought you were getting was not exactly what you heard, saw, or were getting. All right, so let's go into this. It says, Arizona Republican Party Chairman Jeff DeWitt resigned Wednesday after he could be heard in a leaked recorded offering a job to the U.S. Senate candidate Kerry Lake and asking her to name a price that would keep her out of politics. DeWitt's departure shakes up the Republican Party in a battleground state that will feature prominently in the battle for control of the White House and the U.S. Senate in the November elections. At the time of the recording last March, Lake was waging an unsuccessful court fight, challenging her loss in the 2022 race for Arizona governor and gearing up for a U.S. Senate campaign. Meanwhile, Republicans in Washington, bruised by a disappointing showing in the midterms, were talking openly about plans to seek GOP Senate nominees who would be more viable in general elections. Now, we're going to stop right there. Why did I read that part right there? I want to go back to something that's very important. Remember, you and I both are reading this for the very first time. So we're going to go back to this last paragraph that I read, because there's something in this paragraph that somebody should ask themselves, okay? Listen to what it says. At the time of the recording last March, Lake was waging an unsuccessful court fight challenging her loss in the 2022 race for Arizona governor and gearing up for a U.S. Senate campaign. Stop right there. So now let's just look at that. If Lake was challenging her gubernatorial race and saying that she won, and that's what she wanted to do, why at the same time she would be gearing up for a Senate race? I'm asking you this. See, we've got to ask these things outside of the box, because I've seen a lot of alternative media outlets describe this stuff from one perspective. Oh, good for Lake for rejecting the bribe. Good for Lake, and that shows you how corrupt the politics is. And this is going to give Lake such a boost when she runs for Senate, because it shows us that she cannot be bribed. Right now, let me ask you something. If this was recorded in March, why the hell did she wait to right now, when it's time for a Senate race, to release it? I'm asking. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I'm not the spoon, the fork, and I'm definitely not the butter knife. If you've had this recording and it was so paramount to your honor and integrity, why wait to release it when it can benefit you in a Senate race? If it was moral, if you were moral and ethical, if you had morals and it was ethical, you would have released it then when you were disputing the Arizona gubernatorial race. Why wait now when it can be beneficial? I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to pose something to you all, okay? And I'm not saying this is so, but I'm giving you something to think outside the box. this was dropped, and now you see a lot of people jumping on Lake's bandwagon saying she can't be bought. What, a million, 10 million? This is what is on the recording. What, a million, 10 million, a billion? When they were offering her a bride, right? Now here's something that stands out. How did she get the tape recorded in the meeting? I'm asking. Because when they have these secure behind the door meetings, isn't everybody checked to prevent this from happening? I'm asking. Okay, I could be wrong, but what I would not be wrong about is posing to you a different school of thought on this. I don't care one way or the other, but we can't let one narrative just rule the show when it can be something else. Okay, if morality and ethics is your core and you could not be bribed, and this was so egregious for them to even try, then why the hell did you hang on to the recording for over a year, about a year? And why would you release it when it becomes the most beneficial to you when it comes to a Senate race? And who was the person who recorded it? And what do they have to gain from this? Right? Do you understand? Now let's read this. Now you just heard what I said. Now let's just read this part again, okay? I want to pose this stuff to you, and I want you to read this. Not read what they think that you're reading. Read what they have written. And then examine what they have presented to you. Because sometimes when we read, we assume as we read. And we overlook something that is dropped in the lines of the paragraph. That paragraph says, at the time of the recording last March, it was recorded last March, released when she ran for Senate, as she's running for Senate. This gives her an look to release that, especially when it shows that you are not susceptible to bribes. That means more people are going to jump on your bandwagon, and then you're going to have that Senate leader, especially when you're talking about, I'm tired of America being sold out and blah, blah, blah. And you get in there, people are going to back you because they're looking at your morals and your ethics, because you could not be bribed, according to the recording. You couldn't be bribed, right? It's right there. But what happened to the morals and ethics to openly tell your constituents and the people who backed you back then that happened? And why wait to such a time as you are now running for Senate to release it? There has to be something else. There has to be a motive. There has to be some technology up in this. It has to be. Let's go further in this. It says, at the time of the recording last March, I'm going to keep emphasizing that. Last March. People are acting like this happened last week, yesterday, last month. The recording took place last March. Okay. All right. Lake was waging an unsuccessful, okay, court fight challenging her loss in 2022. So she understood that she was losing her court case to become the governor of Arizona, right? So she waited till the most beneficial time to maximize the leaking of the recording. Am I defending the Arizona governor? No, they may be hand in hand in this. I'm saying, yeah, well, he had to step down and he's catching flack. Maybe he was going to step down anyhow. And maybe this was a time to boost somebody who the deep state can control, but who the main people think that is a free thinker and cannot be bought. Let's go in that paragraph again there. At the time of the recording last March, Lake was waging an unsuccessful, not successful, would she have released that recording if she had won her court challenge? No. She only released it now. She didn't even release it prior to her run for Senate. So is that showing ethics and morals? No, it's showing thinking about maximum political gain. Okay? I'm just being real with you. I have no skin in this thing. I have no horse in the race, none of this. I'm just presenting to you an alternative school of thought, okay? Because you know in bizarro world, up is down, down is up. And they know that people are so fed up with corruption. But do you actually think the system will allow that to happen at this time? So they put into place people-controlled assets. I'm not saying she is. I'm saying that the system, the deep state, puts in controlled assets that you believe that are independent and free thinkers. Look what the world thought about Obama. Oh, he is eloquent. Oh, he should run for president. He could do this, come out of nowhere. Didn't even serve his whole first term as senator. Talked about change and erasing the race line and being about building America and doing this. And what did he do? He came out after a while. You start calling him a deep state shield, right? A deep state puppet. But first, all of the bluster and glamour was about him. Maybe he can offer hope and change. Isn't that the same thing? She can't be bought. So now the people who are hoping for something better and hoping that the system can be changed, guess what they change? Guess what they do? They jump behind a candidate that presents themselves as morally upstanding and have ethics, and that will fight against the machine. I'm just reading what's written, and I'm posing a new school of thought because nobody else posed it. I watched it for days, for the last couple of days, on all of the YouTube channels, some of them that I had never even watched before, but I watched them, whether they were the mainstream or alternative, and none of them posed these schools of thought. And I'm saying, why? If you are these free thinkers, these deep thinkers, how can you go with one narrative on this situation? Especially when the empire is collapsing. That's when they become more desperate, and that's when they become more subtle and sly on what they do. So let's go further. It says, at the time of the recording last March, I'm going to go back to that again. Remember, I told you I'm going to keep hitting that. At the time of the recording last March, not this January, not this past December, not this past November, but at the time of the recording last March, Lake was waging an unsuccessful court fight, challenging her loss in the 2022 race for Arizona governor and gearing up for a Senate campaign. So she was going to gear up for a Senate campaign anyhow. All right, let's go. Meanwhile, Republicans in Washington, bruised by a disappointing showing in the midterms, were talking openly about plans to seek GOP Senate nominees who would be more viable in general elections. Now, right here, they say they were bruised, and then they hear the rumblings in the GOP about we need people who won't compromise. We need people who are upstanding. We need people who will stand up for the American Republic and for the Constitution. And guess what they do? They set up situations like this to fool you, to put people in office to do what they want them to do. You think they're changed? Look at the House Speaker. Didn't I tell you when y'all were talking about, oh, he was going to do this and he was going to do that? I said, okay, we shall see. We shall see. All right. Same thing here. Am I saying that she is corrupt? No. Am I saying that she did this on purpose? No. I'm saying, but this is a line of thinking that is real, that can be looked at. and cannot be overlooked, because the deep state is in trouble. The American Republic is in trouble. The American empire is in trouble. And do you believe that they would allow this to happen at a time when they are being swamped by black swans and geopolitical events and economic turmoil? Do you believe that? Do you believe that these people who have ruled so long, and they have think tanks that envision all types of scenarios, they fund these think tanks to think about this, and come back with a report? Do you think that they missed that? I'm asking. I'm just asking. So, listen, it says, it's talking about the recording. It says, there are very powerful people that want to keep you out. DeWitt tells Lake in what he described as a selectively edited recording, first published by the Daily Mail. But they're willing to put their money where their mouth is in a big way. He does not say who asked him to approach Lake, but said they were back east. He asked her repeatedly not to tell anyone about the conversation. That's not suspicious to you, huh? That's not suspicious to you that these big donors would request a meeting with her and allow her to walk in without being checked. And then he would say all these things. Oh, don't tell anybody, though. Oh, don't tell anybody, though. These people, never naming the people. But look, they offering big money, though. But look, but you can't tell anybody, though. These are powerful people. They'll kill me. They'll kill me. All right? And she holds on to that. And then it starts dropping when it's most beneficial to her candidacy for Senate. Does that make sense to you? I'm asking. This is what I keep telling you. The system is outrageous, buddy. You guys are going to see this. You're going to see this. I know some of you, see, when there's a longing for change and you're about to lose hope in what you believed in, sometimes you gravitate towards that, which is offering you something that you're looking for. Let me give you an example. Black people in America, for so long, they wanted to see change in America, and they wanted it in actions, right? They wanted it in policy actions. And so when Obama steps on the scene, they gravitate towards him because he could speak the lingo whenever he wanted to. He could mesmerize them with his sports and all of that stuff. He could do all of this other stuff, right? It mesmerized them, and it polarized the political scene. But Obama was a shield for the powers that be. But Black America was so wishing for change and equality that they ignored all of the signs that pointed toward him being an instrument of or a tool of power for those behind the scene. And when we look at his policy initiatives, we can see that they were some of the most detrimental policies toward Black America. But Black America gravitated toward him because he looked and he spoke and he offered a bit of change. Hold on one second. Let me get me a little water, everybody. Hold on one second. Oh, my God. Oh, come on, YouTube. Stop muting my mic. Stop muting my mic. This is not YouTube. I'm sorry, everybody. This is not YouTube doing this. This was StreamYard doing this, muting my mic. Every time I click off, it click back on. Click muted. I'm asking you all, but they can't stop the bum rush. I can still say what I've said. What I'm saying to you all, and to be honest with you, that pissed me off just a second ago, what they just did. They're always trying to stop the show. That lets you know that something that I'm saying it resonates. Some of the stuff that I'm saying reaches the hearts and the minds of the people. They don't want you to think, so they continue to suppress my numbers. I even see on Rumble now they're starting to unsubscribe some of my subscribers. I saw it. I watch all of that. So, they did it on Twitter, but I want you to just listen to me for a minute. And I don't know how much got blocked. I don't know how much got blocked by them mute my mic over and over again. But Obama was a shield for Western hegemony. Black America couldn't see it. And even today, if you say something about Obama, I have family members that talk politics. They won't talk it with me because I point out facts. And the facts are against what they believe and what they want. And when you talk about Obama, they get offended with you. Do you know they will even stop talking to you for a while about Obama? Even when I lay out, hey, look, this is his policy here. This is his policy there. This is his policy there. This is his policy here. How can you say he was for you when he did this, and this? How can you say that he was for you when he gave you this over here that was 10 billion, he took $1 trillion? How can you legitimize that and say that he was for you? So they get mad at me when I point out these facts. And I tell them, look, you're not mad at me because I didn't do that. I'm just telling you that. You're mad at him, but you're taking your anger out on me. It's the same thing when I talk about Trump, when I talk about Biden. Remember, all of these people ran in the same circles. So they have similar interests. It was a time when Trump hung out with Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton all the time. I'm talking to mostly white America right now, okay? Because you heard me go in on Obama for black America. Now I'm talking to white America. You know me. I don't care about what. I'm going to tell it to you regardless. Regardless. All right? So, look at the policies that he instituted. I'm talking about the main policies that he instituted. Were they truly beneficial to the recovery of the American empire? Or were they a sideshow? Let's look at some of the things, and we'll address it because this goes right along with this. And this also gives us a stepping stone to address NATO and all of this other stuff. Trump says the buck stops here, right? As the president. Just like George Bush Jr. said, the buck stops here. Remember, he said NATO should be disbanded. Did he disband NATO? I'm asking. Forget all of the other stuff. If the buck stops with the president, did he disband it? Trump didn't start a new war in the Middle East. Nobody committed acts of war. And it was only due to Iran's measured response that the war didn't escalate. Right? Trump says he didn't want to pull out of Afghanistan, yet he was getting ready to pull out of Afghanistan. And they were getting ready to pivot to Asia for China. What difference is that with what Biden is doing? Huh? What difference is that from what crazy Biden is doing? And we know that he's crazy. I'm telling you, you know Biden is crazy as hell. So what difference is that of what Biden has done? Some say, well, Trump wanted to pull out of Syria. If the buck stopped there, he could have, right? Either the buck stops with the president or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then why the hell are everybody focusing on the president? You should focus where the buck stops at, right? Nobody wants to address these issues because they are uncomfortable issues to address. And that's why people get offended with me, because I'm in your face with it. But like that old song says, mama didn't raise no fool. I just look this way. So what I do to you all, am I saying that Trump does not want to change America? No, I'm not saying it. I'm just saying look at the reality of the situation. How can Obama say that he was about change and his policies were a continuation of his predecessor? I remember John Kerry sitting on a panel. I used to have it on my screen. Matter of fact, hold on one second. Let me see if I can bring this up. Okay. I just want to see if I can bring this up because I want to show you something. Let's see. Let's go here. Hey, everybody's in the building. Thank you. Deborah J, thank you. They're messing with my sound. I'm telling you, I have no control over it. They do this on a regular basis. Sometimes they block me. They knock me off the air and all that stuff like this. I just ask when this stuff happens, you guys stick with me until we get it straightened, because what they're trying to do is run you off so that when the show is over, if I have 35 or 75 people listening, after the show is over, they'll say no views. And they'll keep it at no views for hours. Okay? That's what they do to me. All right? But it's okay. If I can just reach one of you, it's cool. I've done my job. But I want to go to something real quick. Give me 1 second. Let's see if I can put it up on this computer. Right here. And if I can put it up on this computer, I'm going to put it up on this computer. Let's see. Let's see if that's the one. Hold on 1 second. Right, I think this might be it right here. I'm trying to find the longer version of it, everybody. Hold on 1 second. I had it on my computer and I erased it after I did a show. I knew I should have kept it. I don't know why I didn't keep it. But I want you to listen to something. Let's see. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. But that's too long. I just want the 3 minute view. I had it on my other computer, but my other computer went down or whatever like that. But hold on 1 second, everybody. This is very important that you hear this, okay? Because this shows you where we are with the politics and with the so-called different presidents, and shows you that all of them become belligerent tyrants. And I'm gonna bring something else up to you too in just a second. Let's see. And all of this connects to NATO, the blood rain of NATO too. So that's why I'm searching for this so diligently. I don't want to put the entire thing up there. The JCPOA. Hold on 1 second. They got all of this other crap up here now. Let's see if I can go back and see. Hold on 1 second. It's going to take a minute. So everybody, matter of fact, let me play a little clip for you while I'm looking for, because I don't want you guys to just be dead space or whatever. And anybody in the chat, continue to talk. I'm going to play a little clip. It'll be let's see. Let me try to find you like a short clip to play. Let me look up on my dashboard because I don't like that dead time. All right. Let's see. I got so many clips up here. I'm trying to see the appropriate short clip for you. Let's see something about NATO real quick. All right. We're going to play something about NATO, and then I might stop the clip if I find the video real quick, okay? But just listen. Just listen to what they're saying about NATO a while ago.
With Greece set to hold a second parliamentary election in June, following the last polls at the end of May, one party, the Democratic National Liberation Movement, or DKEA, is calling for an independent Greece, which decides its own national future in contrast to the EU states. The DKEA party was established earlier this year in opposition to the current Greek government's course. Its stated goals are to strive for Greek unity and independence and an exit from the EU and NATO. It's also calling for resistance to Western hegemony, which, according to its leader, is destroying the country. The party founder and ex-Energy and Environment Minister, Panagiotis Lafazanis, says that Greece should reject Western influence and strive for closer ties with Russia.
The parties that will enter Parliament have approximately the same political position, especially these three parties, New Democracy, Syriza and Kinal, Movement of Change. Their political positions are almost identical. All three parties are products of the Western centres, Brussels, Berlin and Washington. They unquestioningly follow Western politics in a very subservient way. What the West says is the law for these parties. Greece has become a protectorate. Greece has passed into the hands of the oligarchy and its economy is literally sold out to transnational centres. And it's this Greece that matters because whichever of these parties forms the government, the political position will be the same. An equally reactionary, anti-people, anti-social and servile political position. First and foremost, our party, the Democratic National Liberation Movement, or DKEA for short, is against the protectorate status imposed on our country, against our country's dependence and its transformation into a kind of colony of Brussels, Berlin and Washington. We want an independent Greece, a Greece which will actually decide its own national and social future. For us, this is the main issue. The second issue that disguises us is our clear and precise position regarding the war in Ukraine. We say that Russia is right in this war. Russia did not cause this war. On the contrary, the war was waged by the United States, NATO and the Ukrainian Nazi regime. They caused this war, they are aggravating it, and they are leading Ukraine, Europe and the whole world into the abyss. Unfortunately, this unanimity that exists regarding the condemnation of Russia is literally destructive for Greece, for our region and, of course, for Europe and the whole world. This unanimity regarding Russia leads our country into even bigger dependence, carries even greater threats to our security and our survival, because Greece has now turned into a base for a big Western campaign against Russia. From the American bases located in Greece, troops and weapons systems are launched against Russia and are sent to Ukraine and neighbouring countries. For us, this is unacceptable. This puts Greece at great risk. We want Greece to be independent, to strive for very close, friendly cooperation with Russia, with which we have absolutely no disagreements. DKEA is the only party that says Russia is right. Russia is not the aggressor. Russia cannot be isolated. And vice versa, Russia should be helped in dialogue with Ukraine in order to find a fair, peaceful solution based on realistic positions. None of the mass media in Greece show our position. It does not give us the opportunity to speak to the Greek public. This shows that there is no democracy in Greece. On the contrary, there's a dictatorship, because democracy means that the voice that is different is also heard. NATO wants to escalate the war in Ukraine to an extreme form. I think that we are at the beginning of this war, its expansion and not the end of it. There is no benefit for Greece in supporting NATO in this war of aggression in Ukraine or in helping make this war more intense. Today, Russia is not at war with Ukraine, but at war with the entire West. For the first time in history, one country is opposed to almost everything, the so-called developed world. I'm talking about governments, of course, not people. Greece must say one big no to NATO, must say that it will not follow the sanctions imposed on Russia because they are illegal, unfair and unfavourable for our nation and our national path. Greece must stop sending weapons to Ukraine, which escalates the war, and all this needs to be done right now. This is our position, and it should be the position of Greece. Greece today can play a positive role in stopping the evil that's happening now in Ukraine. This should be the mission of our country, rather than being a colony and a pawn of NATO, America, Brussels, Germany, and of course, in this dirty war.
All right. It seems like they scrubbed the internet of the short version. They had a minute and some version with him talking. But see, I get past all that. I can find something if I'm looking for it. They got like a minute and like 29-second clip, right, of John Kerry talking about this certain issue. but they're talking, the newscast is talking over him part of that time, and they have the long version of the speech that he was given when he was being questioned back and forth on this. But I found the Reuters readout or the Reuters article on it. Okay, so I won't play the video, but I got the article that has some of the clips, the quotes in it. Okay, so that's just as good. That'll allow me a chance to read it to you, and then we can go and we'll see just how desperate the empire is. Remember, I want you to understand something. We know for a fact that Joe Biden is crazy as a donkey's butt. We know that, right? We know that. And look what he's done. Look what he's doing. So if we measure that and we know that Joe Biden's as crazy as a donkey, but let's measure something else, okay? Because fairness is fairness. And we have to measure everybody by the same metrics, okay? And when we measure everybody by the same metrics, sometimes when we look at it and we step back from our biases for a minute and we look at it in the proper perspective, then the person that we held to this high degree or this high standard of having impeccable character and really wanting to do this for America and this and that, some of that goes out the window. So I want to read to you something, okay? I want to advance to you something. As we talk about the American empire, the NATO war machine must be fed. Remember what I said, that during the campaign, Trump was talking about taking America out of NATO. But NATO is America. America was it. They used NATO to kind of beat down or browbeat Russia, and they used NATO as an instrument of war to continue to occupy Africa, and which they siphon off resources from, which is good for Europe and good for America. That's why Europe continues to stay America's client states. They use it to browbeat Latin America to do the same. They use it to try to contain China, right? Why would America give up their instrument of war to do that when they would lose out majorly? Well, listen to what John Kerry says when he was Secretary of State, okay? This article is from, man, what is going on here? This article from Reuters was published August 11, 2015. Now, before I go into the article, I'm going to give you the key words so that you can find it yourself, right? So that I don't hold something over you that you can't find for yourself, because it is very important that you are able to access the same type of information that I'm accessing so that I can't exploit you, so that I can't use what I know to put you in a subservient position mentally, okay? So I'm going to go back one second, and I put in the keywords in the Google search engine. John Kerry talks about JCPOA and the end of the petrodollar. Okay. All right. I put that in there so that you can. Now, let me say that again. John Kerry talks about the JCPOA and the end of the petrodollar. Now, I put in, when I was searching, I put in some other stuff and in YouTube, and I found certain clips, but those are the clips that I could do without. They talk about it, but they have all this stuff before and after and in between some commercials, and we don't need that. We can go right to this article. It's cool. Okay. The first article that comes up is from Reuters, which is a British news publication. Reuters, okay? And the article is titled, "Dollar Could Suffer If U.S. Walks Away from Iran Deal." John Kerry. This is very important as we talk about NATO and as we talk about Trump and as we talk about any viable or prospects or candidates for the U.S. presidency, okay? This is very important. And this is why the war machine is trying to be fed through constant escalation, okay? Y'all get it? Just give me a second, all right? And the article says, if the United States walks away from the U.S. from the nuclear deal with Iran and demands that its allies comply with U.S. sanctions, a loss of confidence in U.S. leadership could threaten the dollar's position as the world's reserve currency, the top U.S. diplomat said on Tuesday. Remember, when he stated this, he was the U.S. Secretary of State. He had also ran for president, and there was questions about him winning that election. You know, the same questions that everybody talked about with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. But back then, the shoe was on the other foot with that. See, I don't care which party, but I'm gonna point this out. So we have not reached territory that we haven't been before. Okay, remember that. And if for those of you who may be too young, go Google it. A disputed election. Go Google it. So look, it says we will turn around and nix the deal and then tell them. He said, if we turn around and nix the deal and then tell them you're going to have to obey our rules and sanctions anyway, that is a recipe very quickly for the American dollar to cease to be the world's reserve currency, the currency of the world. Excuse me, John Kerry said in a statement. Now, what's important about that? That's exactly what Donald Trump did. Right? Right? See, this is what I'm saying. I beat down Joe Biden. You know that. You know I beat down Obama. I beat down Bush, Clinton, all of them for their outlandish, outrageous policies. But I would be remiss if I didn't point out these facts here. Okay? The very thing that he described, he said he was talking to world leaders when he was doing that interview. I remember because I watched that over and over and over again. And he said there was already rumblings out there of nations tired of the dollar because they was tired of what the U.S. dictates. And he says, just imagine, right? And I'm going to reread this, and I want you to pay close attention to this because this is very important, okay? And I know some people might get butthurt, but I have to point the truth out. If you are mad at me, please do not be mad at me. Charge it to my head and not to my heart. I'm giving you the truth, okay? I'm giving you stuff that cannot be argued about. All right, because you can actually point to it, see it, smell it, taste it, hear it, read it, right there. It says, if the United States walks away from the nuclear deal with Iran, didn't we walk away from the nuclear deal with Iran? All right, under what president? I'm asking. Somebody put it in the chat. I'm going to look at the chat for a second. Somebody put it in the chat. Let me go to the chat because I haven't been looking in the chat. Yes, Deborah, I'm on Twitter. Yes, I am. Mr. Carter, I'm sorry, no sound, but it's back up. The sound is back up. Channel member, Reven Van Hosen, shout out. My guy, Perseverance Chameleon is in the building. Joel Bradford is in the building. Random Z Bird, Random, you know, I always mess that up, Random. So he's in the building. Pedro across the pond. All right. So put that in the chat, please. I'm on Deborah J. I'm on Locals. On Locals, it's the empowerment of truth.locals.com. I'm on Twitter. Matter of fact, I'll pull the handles up right now while I'm talking to you. Let's see. Hold on one second. Let me pull the Twitter. It's twitter.com/pill, P-I-L-L, what is that, /, diaries. Diaries, okay? I'm on Twitch. Let's see. Twitch.com, the Red Pill Diaries. I'm on Rumble. Where's the Rumble handle? Let's see. Hold on, everybody. Rumble.com/the Red Pill Diaries. I'm on Odyssey. Odyssey.com/@the Red Pill Diaries. I forget what this 9 or something like that. But please join those things. They're free. And I also have a Patreon if you'd like to join the Patreon. It's patreon.com/the Red Pill Diaries. If you want to become a channel member, you can become a channel member. That's cool too. If not, just give a thumbs up, watch the videos, share the videos. I really appreciate it. But now let me go to something. And shout out to everybody that's watching on Rumble too and Odyssey, and those who may be watching or will watch on Twitter and on Twitch. Let's see. Let me go to something. Go back to this article real quick. So I want somebody to put this in the chat. Under which president did we walk away from the JCPOA? Please put it in the chat real quick. Because I'm a hand Joe Biden all the hell he can get, but I'm also going to point out the truth too with other people. All right. Every time I think about Joe Biden, I say, this dude is this dude is on the man. He and Obama need to be put in the sack together. But anyway, let me go in the chat again and see if anybody's put it in there real quick. Trump. Okay. Joel said Trump. Absolutely. All right. Remember that now. This is what I'm telling you, because everybody thinks that these different people are offering a different take on America, and they're going to do this and that for America. I want you to understand this. I'm breaking this down for you, and I'm going to use the articles to break it down for you so that you won't say I've embellished anything or I put my own 2 cents into it. Okay. All right. Because I don't care anything about the political system, because I know what the political system does to people who gets involved in the political system. All right. So, and I'm not knocking you if you do. But I think when you're a Republican or you're a Democrat or you're independent or you're of this policy, you have to compromise a little bit of yourself, and you can't really tell the truth wholly to the people, because you have to walk a party line. You have to do this. You have to do that to show up support for your party. Well, my party is humanity. And so I'm going to walk the fine line of following God and doing putting in the play what God said, put into play, truth. And to bear witness to the truth, even if it be against your own self. Okay? And if God is for me, I don't care who is against me. If God is for you, who can be against you? Man, I'm telling you. Whoa, I feel good. You should feel good too. Let's go a little. So Joel says Trump. All right. Now let's look at this article again. It's very important. If the United States walks away from the nuclear deal with Iran and demand that its allies comply with U.S. sanctions, stop right there. We already know who walked away from the nuclear deal, right? And what did he demand after that? That everybody sanction Iran, right? Why am I saying that? Am I coming down on Trump? No. I'm showing you policies. And I'm showing you where we are with the policies and what these policies lead to. Okay? It says, and demands that its allies comply with its sanctions. That's what was demanded of all allies and people alike. America tried to impose its will on the world after it breached the JCPOA. Iran didn't breach it. America did. Right? Listen what John Kerry warned back then. A loss of confidence in U.S. leadership could threaten the dollar's position as the world's reserve currency, the top U.S. diplomat said on Tuesday. All right. Let's see if he's right. Okay. Let's see if he's right. According to Watcher.guru, there's an article that came out, said Britain offers bonds worth $28 billion in local currency, not U.S. dollars. Then there's another article that comes out, says, where is it at right here? Let me see if I can pull it up. Iran no longer uses the dollar. I didn't know this. More than 50% of the trade that China does now is done outside the dollar. Did you know that? And so when it was told to me, I went and did research. Some say 50, some say 60, some even had the estimates up to 70% of China's trade done outside the dollar. Russia now holds a larger holding of yuan than they do euro and dollars. This didn't happen out of the blue. Listen to what I'm saying. This did not happen out of the blue. It happened after what? The U.S. leadership was warned that if we get into this deal with Iran and we don't honor our agreement and we pull out, and then we demand that everybody that we said that, hey, get on board with this agreement, we're going to honor this agreement, and that'll keep Iran from becoming a nuclear power, that'll let Iran come back into the fold of the so-called, quote-unquote, civilized world. The dollar will be maintained, and everything will be okay. Now we look at the situation. America pulls out the deal, sanctions nations for not following her cue for pulling out the deal, threaten other nations for sanctions. And now, what did he say? That will cause a confidence crisis in U.S. leadership. What did he say? And could threaten the dollar's position as the world's reserve currency. What is going on? Again, if we're gonna go after Obama, which but that's, man, I just, that dude just does something, makes my skin boil. But anyway, and if we're gonna go after Joe Biden, you know, the crook, and the kook in office now, we've got to also put the broken eggs in the nest with the chicken that broke them too. And we know that it was Donald Trump that pulled out of the JCPOA and demanded these things, right? And look where we are financially, and look what's going on with the world moving outside of the dollar. This did not happen outside. Even as we talk about America first, how could that be America first when you were pre-warned? Hey, these leaders are saying, listen, our policies have been erratic and unsound. Now, if we go along with this deal, you've got to honor it. If you pull out and then threaten to sanction people who went along with the deal, then you know what? We don't want your leadership no more, and we don't even want your dollar anymore. That happened. But it didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened after being told that. So that was either dereliction of duty or ineptitude of leadership. Do you understand me? So it goes further. Listen what he says here. This is very important, what I was just telling you about. If we turn around and nix the deal, and then nix the deal means kill the deal, to breach the contract. That's what he's talking about. If we turn around and breach the contract or leave the deal, and then tell them, who is them? Who are these them? The people who they brought to the table. Carry in the audio, he tells you India, Iran, India, China, Russia. He starts South Africa. He starts naming all of these nations, the very nations that are ditching the dollar right now. In that lecture, Kerry mentioned them by name, a lot of them. And he says, if we turn around and nix the deal and then tell them, you're going to have to obey our rules. You know that rules-based international order, where the rules apply to you, but not to me. In America's eyes, in Britain's eyes, he's talking about that. You're going to have to obey our rules and sanctions anyway. That is a recipe very quickly, not shortly, not down the road, but that is a recipe very quickly for the American dollar to cease to be the reserve currency of the world. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said at a Reuters newsmaker event. Now, I want you to understand something. What is going on? What is the United States mad about? Huh? What is the United States? Now, to show you just how those words reverberate across political lines, to show you just how bad things have become, I'm going to go back to a clip that I played on this show a couple of times, just the first 2 or 3 minutes, right? Just the first 2 or 3 minutes, because it goes hand in hand with the policies that were enacted and the ramification of those policies that were enacted. And when we look at that, we can see now a desperate America, which is the linchpin to NATO. And so they're fighting for NATO supremacy. They're fighting for U.S. hegemony. They're fighting for dollar supremacy. And in return, when you have dollar hegemony, dollar supremacy, you also have a strong pound, a strong euro. So all of them have an economic vested interest in maintaining dollar supremacy and hegemony, for maintaining NATO hegemony and supremacy. You understand what I'm saying? But the policies that were going to be the nuclear explosive at the base were already enacted. And to some people's surprise, it was enacted by Donald Trump. But nobody tells that. Nobody says that, right? So look, let's go to something. Listen to this again.
Welcome back. More warnings this morning coming out about doing business with China as Xi Jinping moves to make China the #1 economic superpower and overtake the United States. I spoke with Texas Congressman Michael McCall, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. We spoke at the Milken Institute. I want to ask you about China because now the Chinese Communist Party has been able to get the Saudis to transact in the Chinese yuan. Are you worried about the dollar losing its reserve status?
Well, not so much that. What I don't like, all of a sudden they're the peace broker. You know, they show up at the 11th hour. We're not there, right? When we don't lead, China fills the void. So they negotiate this peace settlement between the Saudis and Iran. And all it really means is they can have embassies in their respective countries. But they're doing it. Macron went to visit Chairman Xi in Beijing when I was in Taipei. What I do worry about the dollar is in the Belt and Road Initiative, that's their debt trap. You have to sign a contract saying, I'm going to sign up for the digital yuan. What China wants long term is for the digital yuan to be the global currency and not the U.S. dollar.
That's incredible.
That's incredible, she says. All right? But you had the forewarning. So let's go a little further, okay? Because all this, when you understand this, you'll see why Iran is at the butt end of what America wants, war with Iran. Because they see that as the linchpin to collapsing the American empire. They see that. And so Iran, in their mind, is something that must be dealt with immediately. Not, listen, these people are lunatics. They're sociopaths. Not the policies that they initiate should be dealt with. Not the people who are suffering at the hands of the policies within her own borders. They should not be looked at and dealt with in the proper manner. Iran should, because Iran is the cause. The politicians are not the cause of it. The policies of those politicians are not the cause of it. It's Iran. And when it's not Iran, it's China. And when it's not China, it's Venezuela. And when it's not Venezuela, it's Syria. When it's not Syria, it's Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. If it's not them, then it's Russia. It's never America. It's never Great Britain. It's never the European Union and their racist, fascist policies against their own constituents. It's never that. They never accept responsibility for these policies that they put in place. Never. And always demanding that you abide by laws and you abide by ethics and morals. But let's go a little further.
Well, I think the idea of de-dollarization is one which is going to be necessary. You have two aspects to it. One is the efforts of the United States to dictate the rules of trade and currency to all nations, which is the basis of the dollar system or the petrodollar system, is no longer valid. This was a neo-colonial system that was imposed largely through the military force of the United States and NATO, regime change, for example, against Gaddafi, the attempt to overthrow the Assad government, the Iraq attack, and now the Ukraine war, so to try to weaken Russia. But it's not going to work. Many countries around the world, especially in the so-called global south, are now moving out from under this so-called rules-based order. And this new deal between France and China is an example of that. You also had the Chinese involvement in the rapprochement between Syria and Iran. Saudi Arabia and Iran. We also see trade going between India and Russia with a ruble-rupiah transaction basis. So we're in an era where the unipolar order doesn't function. And we see it with the collapse of the banks in the United States, the collapse of the Swiss giant Credit Suisse, the toppling, or the teetering, I should say, of the Deutsche Bank. So we're moving into a new era in which the emphasis will be on multilateralism rather than rule by one unipolar power.
Understand that? Right? And he mentioned NATO and the overthrow of these nations, this is how the United States uses NATO. See, the war machine must be fed. America understands this. Those in Brussels understand this. London, Paris, Berlin, they understand this. It is you who don't understand what is actually going on. And that's why I'm sitting here. I don't care what religion you are. I give two flips about that. All right? I give two flips about that. I don't care your sexual orientation. I don't care nothing about that. What I do care about is disseminating truth to the masses. That's what I care about. You can accept it or you can reject it. Once it's delivered, it's immaterial to me whether you accept it or not. But I'm going to do my best to give it to you. And I'm going to empower you by the grace of God by showing you how I came about getting some of this information so that you can get it yourself and you can pass it on to the next person. The more people that are learned and that comes into the knowledge of this stuff, the more powerful you are. And the better you can deal with the situations that are arising. Okay. So let's go back to this again, because it's very important. And I was talking to my children the other day. I said, I know sometimes when I'm talking to you guys and I'll tell you something and I'll go back and I'll tell it to you over and over again. Right. I know. And sometimes we got it, Dad. We got it, Dad. So later on, when they didn't do it, I'll come back and say, hey, I told you this. Oh, I forgot. Well, how did you forget? Didn't you tell me I got it, Dad? Didn't you tell me that? So I employ that same thing because I love my children. I employ that. And because I love the truth, I employ that with everybody. So we go back to that and we're going to reread part of that, right? Because you just heard those videos and how the dollar and these wars and NATO and the United States are all interconnected. You just heard that. So let's go back to what he said, because it's something else I just saw when that video was on. I was scrolling down in the article that I want to address to. Okay. So it's John Kerry says, if the United States walks away from the nuclear deal with Iran and demands that its allies comply with U.S. sanctions, a loss of confidence in U.S. leadership could threaten the dollar's position as the world's reserve currency, the top U.S. diplomat said on Tuesday. Aren't nations realigning with the so-called global South? Aren't nations starting to take a stand, small and large nations, starting to exert their own sovereignty and their own political will over what they used to do about submitting to what Britain and the United States and Europe wants? Well, that didn't happen out of the blue. John Kerry saw it and he said it. And I don't even like John Kerry too much because I know he's a flip-flopper. But that's what he said. After talking to all of these leaders in the region and spending hours upon hours in different capitals, especially when he made those trips at the end of his tenure as Secretary of State. He was talking to he was trying to hold together the dollar as the reserve currency of the world. And he was getting input from everybody. So he was listening to what they were saying. And he came back and in a Reuters interview, he was talking to the people and telling what they said to him. Right? And the next administration came in and did the total opposite. And now we see nations moving out of the dollar. We see nations no longer looking to American leadership. We see nations forging groups together where they can trade and do business outside of Britain, outside of the United States, outside of the European Union. That didn't come out of the blue. There was a warning there. How can you, listen to me good, how can you be mad if there's a four-way stop sign and you see it and it's lit up in neon lights and you see it a block away and the stop sign says, please, for the sake of your life, stop here. Even if you don't see any traffic, stop. And because you look two ways, you say, I don't see anything, and you run through the stop sign and the Mack truck hit you and kill some of your family members. How can you be mad at the driver of the Mack truck? Huh? You were the one who ignored all of the signs, all of the warnings. That's what the stop sign is there for. It is for a warning. Hey man, don't yield, don't slow down, stop. You need to stop here. They did. They only became more brash, more arrogant, because this is America. And in this article, you'll see what I'm talking about as we go further down, because I saw that when the video was playing. So we're going to read a little bit more, okay? The second paragraph says this. If we turn around and nix the deal and then tell them you're going to have to obey our rules and sanctions anyway, that is a recipe very quickly. And then he said, my friend, but it's not in the article. I remember him saying, my friends. I remember him saying that. For the American dollar to cease to be the reserve currency of the world. Now, give me 1 second. According to the dictionary, the word cease is a verb. It means bring or come to an end. Come to an end. Come to a halt. Come to a stop. End, halt, stop. So let's read that part again. For the American dollar to cease to be, to stop, to come to an end. He was warning it. That's what the nations were saying. So now that it's happening, everybody act like it just comes out the blue. There was policies involved in forcing that to happen. Nobody wants to address it because it may tarnish the person that they want to be in office. But there were policies that were involved that forced that on. Somebody pulled out the JCPOA after being warned that, hey, I've been around. I heard these people that said, oh, man, forget that. We are the number one nation. We can do this. We can do that. But you were warned. And listen what it says. As we go down, he goes and says, defending the July 14th Vienna agreement between Iran and world powers that he helped to negotiate, Kerry deployed a new argument in a feverish battle to prevent lawmakers from killing it. Congress has until September 17th to act. Kerry warned of a potential loss. Listen to this part. This is very important. Because you can't say it, you didn't see this happening. With the rising prices, nations getting out of the dollar and into other currencies and safe havens and commodities, right? And ignoring U.S. sanctions, you can't say that there was not warnings. Listen what it says. Kerry warned. What did it say? Kerry did what? What did he do? He didn't just talk about it. What did he do? According to that article. According to Reuters, he warned. Right? So, according to the dictionary, the word warn, which is the past tense of warn, right? W-A-R-N-E-D, warned is the past tense of W-A-R-N, which is a verb. And it means if someone in advance of an impending or possible danger, problem, or other unpleasing situation. Somebody's telling you, hey, look, I see this happening. I know this is happening because people have warned me that down the road is out. Slow down and detour and go that way. Nah, I go this everywhere. I know how to get around here. I'll go this way every day. And then you go off a cliff because you didn't know the road was out. Was your death the result of the person that warned you, or was your death the result of foolishness and hubris? Huh? I'm asking. So, according to the dictionary, to notify, to alert, to apprise, to give notice, to inform, to tell, to let someone know. Who was he letting know? He was letting know Congress and the incoming administration. That's what he was doing. All right? Let's call it ace of ace and the spade of spade. That's what he was doing, according to the dictionary. Not according to Rashid, but according to the dictionary. So let's go further. It says, Kerry warned of a potential loss. Listen to what he says. Not a loss of just faith. Listen to what he says right here, because this is monumental. This is why the NATO is pushing up against Russia, escalating in Russia. This is why NATO, separately as Britain, the United States, Germany, and France, are escalating in the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, the Mediterranean. This is why they're trying to escalate and pivot to Asia. Listen to what he says. Kerry warned of a potential loss of U.S. financial and political clout. What do you mean? Well, if the dollar is the lifeblood of the American empire, and the dollar is the lifeblood of the American military juggernaut, and if the dollar's the life's blood of this experiment called the European Union, and if the dollar is the life's blood which ties the pound and the euro to value and to success and to relevance, if the dollar goes down, guess what happens? All of those projects go down too, right? So it says, Kerry warned of a potential loss of U.S. financial and political clout. And if the United States falls financially, Britain falls financially. If Britain falls financially, the European Union falls financially. So the loss of one means the loss of all. That's why they are all involved in these wars of aggression around the globe. They didn't listen to the warnings. And now we are looking at a snowball effect, a whole bunch of black swans happening that is causing the collapse, the financial collapse of the Western world. And that's why they continue to trumpet the rules-based international order must be respected. How can you demand somebody to respect something that you disrespected? Huh? Talk to me. Talk back to me. Let's go further. He said this was not something that would happen overnight, but many countries, listen to this. But many countries were chafing under the present international financial agreements. That means they were ready to get from under there because they were feeling the burn. They were feeling the burn of American sanctions, of America's irrational policies, her irrational tendencies, her backstabbing, her disregard for their national interests and their national sovereignty. So they were waiting for something. They warned her. And America ignored it because of hubris, arrogance. Remember that? Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar? I am. Look at what my hands have wrought. Right? And now look what it says right here. Now remember, I pulled this up live on the air just talking to you all. Had no thoughts about even talking on this, but it goes hand in hand with American empire. The NATO war machine must be fed. It has everything to do with that. Listen to what it says. He said, U.S. Treasury experts are doing a full dive on how this works and what the implications are. So before Trump gets into office, there was an assignment given to Treasury experts to see that if America pulled out of the deal and America did this and America did that, what would be the ramifications and how dire would the situation be? And once they came up with those writings, those findings, guess what happens? As with all administrations that go out, they pass those findings over to the incoming administration. Right? Am I lying? Am I lying? So he says, but the notion that we can just sort of diss the deal, meaning just push the deal to the side and say, hey, it's no longer relevant to us. Hell, we got what we want out of it. It's no longer relevant to us. You know, like America has done with all of those ballistic missile treaties. Now that when she thought that she had the advantage over Russia, how she pulled out of all of those missile treaties, and now she wants to renegotiate the missile treaties. Now that she finds out that not only China, but Russia has hypersonic missiles and they're building hypersonic missile defenses, that America has fallen a decade behind. Because now it's not beneficial for her to pull out of the missile defense and the missile agreements that she has, because she's still working with intercontinental ballistic missiles, that are at least 30 to 40 years old, while China and Russia have upgraded theirs. She thought that she had the advantage, so she disregarded it. She nixed it. And now she's asking, hey, we need to sit down and we need to talk about a security framework with this, because it is no longer beneficial to her, and she's falling behind. So now she's using something to try to pull them back in so that she can either catch up or surpass them. Nixing the deal. This is what it gets. So it says this. But the notion that we can just sort of diss the deal and unilaterally walk away, which Trump did. You know, I get on Biden and Obama and them, but I gotta call an ace and a spade, okay? Because it would not be right for me to come to you every day and talk about that I'm impartial to the politics and not bring Trump in on this when he is responsible for some of this. Biden is responsible for some of it. Obama, Clinton, Bush Jr., Bush Sr., all of them are responsible for some of this. But specifically this, Trump is responsible for, okay? It says, but the notion that we can just sort of diss the deal and unilaterally walk away as Congress wants to do will have a profound negative impact on people's sense of America's leadership and reliability. What are they saying now? America is an unreliable partner. As a matter of fact, there was an article yesterday, I believe it was either on RT or Sputnik, Press TV, or one of the major news outlets that were talking about how nations no longer look to America's leadership, right? They were no longer impressed and no longer able to rely on America's word and her leadership. But the article just points that out. And this was written in 2015 as a precursor to what we see right now. What was the day of this article? This article was transcribed from the thing that John Kerry did, and it was August 11th, 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 9 years. And we're seeing the ramifications of those policies and those warnings from 9 years ago. They did not come out of the blue. All right, let's go further. All right, and I know I have to go, but I can't leave this out like this. Listen to what it says. It says, now, you know, I told you about the hubris. This is where I wanted to get to, right? About the hubris. And listen to what it says. New York-based Boris Schlossberg, managing director of FX Strategy, BK Asset Management, challenged Kerry's reasoning. Now, listen. He didn't challenge Kerry's knowledge of who Kerry talked to, the leaders of those countries. He didn't challenge Kerry's knowledge of the content which they conveyed to him, right? He challenged Kerry's reasoning. Now, Kerry was in possession of more information than he let out. But this guy, he only sees American dominance, Western dominance, dollar hegemony. That's all he can see because it's been that way for so long. So he didn't understand how Kerry came to that rationale, how Kerry came to that conclusion, because he didn't have the informal and formal meetings with leaders around the world at the time when Kerry did it. Okay? So listen what he says. He said the dollar's status could be compromised only if the United States was unable to compete economically on a global scale. Stop right there. What the hell do you mean? That's what's going on right now. She can't compete with China. We see that she can't even compete with Russia militarily. On an industrial scale, Russia is outproducing not just the United States when it comes to military hardware, artillery, radars, warplanes. They are out producing the entirety of the whole Western world. And China's manufacturing capacity is hundreds of times over Russia's, right? Right? And China purchasing power parity leads it to be the #1 economy. Other nations are rising. Russia just became what, the sixth or the fifth largest economy. Other nations are joining, are rising, all while the United States and the European Union and the EU are spinning in debt. Okay? So right there, it pushes away his argument that it can only happen when it's happening. So it goes further. The reality of the situation is that the United States dollar hasn't been this strong in decades. The thought that it could be replaced as a world reserve currency is laughable, right? At this point, on a geopolitical basis, and nothing in the Iran deal even remotely touches upon that issue. Now, he said that in 2015. He can see down the wheel of time in 2024. And exactly what he laughed at in 2015 is no longer a laughable moment in 2024, as the world does exactly what he said couldn't be done. You see that? He laughed because he was so drunk and inebriated on American power, American dominance, militarily, technologically, scientifically, and militarily and economically. He could not see an ending to that. All world leaders, all empires do that. They don't see an ending to the empire until it ends. Right? So let's go a little further. He says, economists and financial analysts have often conjectured that a competing currency like the euro or the Chinese yuan will eventually dethrone the dollar as global trade and financial patterns shift. But the U.S. currency's position has been largely immune, mostly for lack of any good alternatives. No, it has been immune due to technology and due to people fearing something that they don't know. Some people want to get from under the dollar. They're just scared of what the alternative may be. And once they realize that the dollar is not backed by anything, then they will understand that it's time to move on to something new, something greater. As a matter of fact, let me see something real quick. I'm gonna bring this up to you all. And this was a conversation. I cut it into two parts. This was a conversation a while ago with Peter Schiff. Where is it at? And I want you to listen to this. This is a 5-minute clip. And then, I'm gonna do a couple more small ones, and then we'll end the show, and I'll try to do another one later if I get a chance to. My back is killing me. It's been hurting me all night. I slept on a heating pad. It's doing martial arts and being my age, man, you feel every bump, bruise, and everything now. So I want you to just listen to this, okay?
This is the Crypto Mile. We are joined by Peter Schiff. We're going to discuss the convergence of a currency and sovereign debt crisis in the US, what this means for fiat currencies worldwide, and also, is gold or Bitcoin the answer to protecting wealth long term? Peter, welcome to the Crypto Mile.
Oh, thanks, Brian. Nice to be here with you in jolly old London.
So let's actually begin with talking about the raising of the debt ceiling. Is the US facing a currency crisis as well as a sovereign debt crisis? And is the dollar on life support?
I think the answer is yes. The only question is when. I mean, clearly we're not having that crisis right now because our creditors, for whatever reason, still maintain confidence in the future of purchasing power of the dollar. They still have confidence in the Fed. The charade that we just went through over the debt ceiling should really be shattering that confidence because, number one, we spent months threatening default, basically letting our creditors know that we may in fact default and that they were low man on the totem pole. Because during these discussions of raising the debt ceiling, nobody said we're going to prioritize bondholders. They basically said, if we can't borrow more money, the first thing we're going to do is default on the money we've already borrowed. And so that is an official admission that the U.S. Treasury is running nothing more than a Ponzi scheme. We're only going to pay back the money we've already borrowed if we can find new people to lend us more, right? We're not going to just tax people to make good on these commitments. We're going to rely 100% on new borrowers. And so that is the pure definition of a Ponzi scheme. The only difference is it's being run by the government instead of a private citizen, but it's still not going to work, right? Ponzi schemes can't work by definition. But then the other problem with this is the rationale, right, or the pretense for the debt ceiling increase was that America always pays its bills, and we need to raise the debt ceiling so we can keep paying our bills. Well, it's actually the opposite. The reason we have to raise the debt ceiling is because we never pay our bills.
Let's talk about alternatives to actually just keep on printing money, keep on going to the bondholders. And you spoke about like that brinkmanship in the lead up to the debt ceiling. That did the US no favors at all. If there are cuts in government spending, what sector gets cut?
Well, obviously, when you're running $2 trillion a year deficits, which the US is, you've got to make that up. You've either got to cut spending or raise taxes. Now, personally, I would like to see everything through spending cuts. But to the extent that we need additional taxes, it should be through a consumption-based tax, at least in the United States, not higher income taxes, but some type of value-added tax, sales tax, or something like that, that isn't as economically destructive as taxing work and production. You want to tax consumption. But we really need significant across-the-board spending cuts, and not just fraud, waste, and abuse. We need to actually cut real spending now, immediately and significantly, including things that are off the table, like Social Security, Medicare, government pensions. We have to cut defense spending. And there are a lot of agencies and departments that I think can be completely eliminated. A lot of spending can be cut, because if we don't do that, there is no way that we can handle this debt. In fact, even if we do that, I still don't think we can handle it without a restructuring of the debt, which means that we have to tell our creditors honestly that, we owe $32 trillion. We cannot pay it back. The taxpayer just simply doesn't have the resources to make good on these commitments. So we need a restructuring here. We're not going to give you 100 cents on the dollar, maybe 50 cents on the dollar. I don't know what the number is.
Okay.
But owners of U.S. Treasuries around the world need to experience some pain along with everybody else, because I don't think the American voters are going to put up with the government saying, you're not going to get the Social Security benefits we promised you, but the Chinese are going to get 100% of what we promised them on their treasuries. I think everybody is going to have to take a haircut to avoid a crew cut, and that would be inflation. Because once you recognize that the debt is unpayable, the only question is, how do we, default on it or restructure it? We can do it honestly, the way I would like to do it, which would actually be better for everybody. Or we could just print money until the money has no value and we have runaway inflation, in which case our creditors will actually be worse off. I would rather get back 50 cents on the dollar, but have the dollar maintain its value, than get back all my dollars, but have them lose 90% of their purchasing power or more.
So that's part one of that. Now let's go to part two.
I would like to do it, which would actually be better for everybody. Or we could just print money until the money has no value and we have runaway inflation, in which case our creditors will actually be worse off. I would rather get back 50 cents on the dollar, but have the dollar maintain its value, than get back all my dollars, but have them lose 90% of their purchasing power or more.
If we're looking at that, and we keep on going down this road, down this trajectory, is hyperinflation down the line? Do you think that could be?
Well, if we stay on this road, then hyperinflation is a foregone conclusion. It is an absolute certainty. So the only way to avoid hyperinflation is to get off the road. But the question is, when do we turn off? How long do we wait before we change course?
So, like hyperinflation of Argentina and other countries around the world, that means something to those citizens. But hyperinflation, the US dollar, well, that's global.
Oh, yeah.
What does that look like?
I don't know. We've never seen it, right?
Yeah,
we haven't had hyperinflation in a reserve currency, like the U.S. But I do think that the most pain will be felt in America, because Americans have benefited dramatically from the dollar status, because it allows Americans, of course, I'm an American, but it allows us to live beyond our means because we don't have to produce to consume. We could just produce money, which costs nothing, that we just create out of thin air, and we can exchange that paper money for the real goods that are produced by hardworking people around the world in factories, and those goods, aren't created out of thin air. They take real resources, land, labor, capital, things like that. And those resources could have been used for something else. Instead, they were used to produce stuff for Americans. So we get a benefit. We also get to borrow money cheaper because we get to borrow what everybody else saves. Americans don't save anything. So where does the credit come from? It comes from the rest of the world. So when the dollar crashes, that's actually going to be a net positive outside the United States, particularly the emerging markets, because I think the people there have borne the lion's share of the burden of propping up the U.S. economy. So I think they have the most to gain from the crash of the dollar. But of course, there are people all around the world that own a lot of dollars, and so to the extent that they're overexposed to the dollar, they're going to experience some losses. So just like when we had the financial crisis, it wasn't confined to the United States because people in Sweden, for example, owned mortgage-backed securities from the United States. So, we've spread the bad paper all around the world. So it's going to be felt all around the world. But I think on balance, it's going to be a positive outside the United States, but a huge negative, at least in the short term, for the United States.
So that just brings us to the combination of restructuring the debt, going to international bondholders of US treasuries and saying to them, we're going to have to restructure this. You're going to have to take a hit. Internally, you're going to have to take a hit. If this doesn't happen, we could see hyperinflation. But then let's bring in what happens with gold, what happens with stores of value in this environment, in this macroeconomic environment?
Well, I think no matter what, gold's going up. I mean, obviously, under hyperinflation, that's when it goes up the most.
Yeah.
And I hope that we avoid that. I mean, I own a lot of gold and gold stocks, so I would personally benefit as an investor from that. But I don't want that to happen. I would prefer an alternative course. But even devaluation default, I think, is going to be bullish for gold. Because I think gold is going to emerge either way as the preeminent store of value safe haven. And I think that the dollar's status as the reserve currency is going to be lost.
Okay.
And then the question is, what is going to replace it? And a lot of people think that the dollar status is not at jeopardy because they don't see a viable alternative, but they're looking in the wrong place. They're looking at, sterling, or they're looking at the euro, or they're looking at the yen or the RMB, and they're saying, hey, those currencies aren't ready to be the reserve. And I would agree.
Right.
We don't need another fiat currency to act as a reserve. We need real money. We need gold. Gold was the reserve for all currencies prior to Bretton Woods. And even after Bretton Woods, when the dollar was the reserve, it was only a reserve because it was backed and redeemable in gold. In fact, the dollar was defined as a weight in gold. That's why it was considered as good as gold. So we've really only been on a fiat standard since 1971. So, about 50 years, a little bit more.
That was only meant to be temporary, Nixon's gold shock.
Oh, initially, sure.
Okay,
sure.
so it still could be temporary, only it lasted years.
Yes. Well, if we were to go back on the gold standard, the question is, would the world trust us?
Right.
Because we already screwed them over once. In fact, when we talked about the debt ceiling, and everybody said America has never defaulted on its commitments, that was a lie, because Federal Reserve notes were obligations to pay gold. And up until 1971, if you were in Britain and you had $35, you could get an ounce of gold. That was the commitment that we made to the world. And then we defaulted on that, and we gave them nothing. It wasn't just that we gave them 50 cents on the dollar, right? Or we didn't say, okay, we'll give you half an ounce of gold for your $35. We'll give you no gold. It was a complete default. So I don't think any one country should be able to issue a reserve. I think that the real reserve should be gold. And we should all be on a level playing field. If you want gold, you have to earn it. So either you have to mine it, or you have to produce something that you could trade for the gold that somebody else mined. But we need an honest monetary system that keeps governments in check. Because if we had sound money, we wouldn't have all this inflation. We wouldn't have all these budget deficits because they're not possible under a sound monetary system.
So are you suggesting multiple gold-backed currencies across the world?
They should all be gold-backed.
Again, what does this have to do with NATO? What does this have to do with the United States? where there have been rumblings that the United States really doesn't have gold in Fort Knox. If they do, it's like Jim Willie said one time, it's a couple buckets full of coins. We already know about the United States and Britain getting caught red-handed, settling their debts in tungsten that was clad in gold. We already know about that. They've tried to scrub the internet of that information, but we already know about that because we've discussed that multiple times on this show. Now, you see how people think that the dollar can never be replaced. Oh, there's no viable option. And then Peter Schiff just said, well, you know, there is a viable option. Gold and commodities, right? So while he was talking, I just did a Google search. And did you know that the BRICS nations were the largest purchasers of gold last year, 2023 and 2022? And do you know that most of the BRIC nations are some of the largest miners of gold too? And did you know that China receives gold in multiple forms? So there's no accurate way to account for gold in China because China is the largest miner of gold. China buys gold. They buy gold through Hong Kong, through Macau, through the exchange that they have. And they even have gold bar machines where they allow the citizens to buy gold. Do you know that? America doesn't have that. Britain doesn't have that. The West doesn't have that. So the world has been going. The rules-based order has been living off the gratuity and the benevolence of the Eastern Bloc. And now that these other systems are in play, we're finding out that the West has little to no gold anymore. Canada has no gold. The United States has little to no gold. As a matter of fact, I remember someone telling me, a wise person telling me, and I was listening to one of their recordings, and they were saying, and this was in 59 or 60 something. They said that America's gold had been gone so long that they don't even know what happened to it. And so when we look at this situation, and you can say, well, we can dismiss that, but how can we dismiss that when right after that, America started robbing the currency of silver? Because remember, everything from a $2 note down was backed by silver, and everything from a $5 note up was backed by gold. And all throughout the 60s, they robbed the coins of the silver, and then they robbed the certificates of the backing of the silver. Remember that? And then from that point on, when they could no longer do that with the silver content in the coins and stuff, they went on to the gold. And Nixon took the world off the gold and the silver standard. So that happened. That's why when you look at coins, pre-65 quarters and dimes have a content of silver in them. Post-64, up into 65 on up, have no content of silver in them. And half dollars and dollars that had a huge makeup of silver from 30%, 40%, and even 90% silver ceased to be after 1969, going into 1970. So after they robbed everything of the silver, they had to look at the gold they had, and they no longer had the gold to cover the spread. So that's why they took the world off the gold and silver standard. That's why they came up with this petrodollar nonsense, because they had to keep the Ponzi scheme going and going. And that's why America and Britain and the EU are fighting like hell, because all of them have a financial and political vested interest in maintaining dollar hegemony, regardless of all the screaming and crying or whatever. All of the systems are connected to the dollar being the number one currency. And without the dollar being the number one currency, Europe loses its political clout and its economic clout, because the euro is an experiment brought to you by the US. The pound and the dollar are tied together. Neither the US nor Britain has any gold, no real supplies of gold. America has access to more gold because unmined areas in America. Britain has little to none. So she has a vested interest in keeping the dollar, because her pound sterling is tied. That's why they can manipulate gold prices, because most gold was run through the London Gold Exchange. That's why the U.S. gold exchange is tied to the London gold exchange. That's why the U.S. stock exchange is tied to the London stock exchange. These two are great manipulators, and they're trying to keep their world afloat, even in the midst of uncertainty and collapse. I'm not lying to you, and they know that China at any time can call their bluff because China has been storing and keeping commodities for the longest, and they have refused to allow gold to leave Chinese borders. And I believe, this is when I interject what I believe. I've been giving you facts, but this is what I believe. So you see how when I tell you facts, I give you facts, and then when I tell you my opinion, I say this is my opinion. One would ask, well, why would China be doing that? I believe that they understand, and it made it even more clear when America and the European Union started to steal and confiscate Russia's holdings. I believe that the gold and silver and all of these commodity holdings is to offset any losses when the dollar collapses. And that means that they can keep humming. So people talk about these empty cities of China. They talk about China's debt, and nobody really talks about that most of China's debt is held by Chinese people. And so with the gold holdings, as a matter of fact, let me pull up something real quick. Let me see if they have anything on here. Real quick. If not, I'll play that clip that I played for you all one time. And that'll give you the understanding of what I'm talking about. Let's see if it's up here. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. If it's no longer up here, because you know they scrub the internet of this stuff immediately after talking about it. So no, they don't have this up here. So what I'll do, I didn't mean to do this. This is going to take a few minutes, so everybody be patient with me. I'm going to replay this clip that I played for you all a while ago, and it'll show you, and it'll bear witness to my perspective on things about why China is holding this gold and why China is falsely reporting the amount of gold that it has. It is preparing for the United States. Remember, Donald Trump said when he was the president that we ought to confiscate China's holding, and we ought to keep it as repayment for that thing, you know, that thing that they put everybody in the house and wouldn't allow you to leave, that thing that they said you needed shots for, you know what I'm talking about. I won't say it because YouTube has already suspended me multiple times on that. But Donald Trump, as president, said that China owed the world, and China should be paying the U.S. and the West reparations, and they should consider confiscating China's holding and reneging on the debt. He used that as a linchpin of the United States nixing its debt with China. If you think I'm lying, Google it. Google it. That Donald Trump said that they should not have to pay China because of this thing, this Wuhan thing that they were talking about. And the Chinese fought back and said, you had the labs, you did this. You did this. The foreign minister got on Twitter and lambasted the United States and even brought up all kinds of things of what the United States was doing. And Donald Trump said that because this has affected the world and the global economy, that the United States was in its rights to seize Chinese assets and to renege on the debt it owed. He said that. But China understands that. And this is why they have this.
Gold is some useless, inert asset, right, whose heyday was in the 19th century, as irrelevant to modern finance as the horse is to transport. Maybe not. Today we return to a favourite theme of ours, and once I haven't looked at since probably 2019, and that is, how much gold does China have? And for those with short attention spans who don't want to watch to the end of this video, I'll cut straight to the chase. China has much more gold than it says it does. In fact, it has more gold than the US. Its enormous gold hoards are all part of its grand global reserve currency status designs. Right, now time to back up those assertions. Let's do an audit. Audits involve a lot of numbers, and too many numbers can get a little overwhelming, so I'm going to try and keep these numbers to a mentally digestible minimum. But let me start with perhaps the most important contextual figure and anchor that in your minds, and that is US gold holdings. Official records show that the United States owns some 8,133 tonnes, most of it in Fort Knox. Although I should say that gold in Fort Knox hasn't been audited for 50 years. The US is the world's largest gold owner, or so you would have thought, and gold comprises 77% of United States foreign exchange reserves. China's officially declared holdings are 1,948 tonnes, so about a bit less than a quarter of the US, and that makes up just 3% of its $3.2 trillion of foreign exchange holdings. The real number is, of course, much higher than that. China has been the world's largest gold producer since 2007. This past decade, it has produced about 15% of all the gold mined in the world. Last year, it produced 380 tonnes, which is about 20% more than the world's second largest producer, Australia. And since 2000, China has mined roughly 6,500 tonnes of gold, and more than half of Chinese gold production is state-owned. China National Gold Corporation alone accounts for 20%. So already, just on Chinese gold production alone, that official 1,948 tonne figure looks doubtful. Crucially, China keeps all of the gold it mines. Exporting domestic gold production is not allowed. And with reserves in decline at home, Chinese mining companies have also been buying assets abroad, across Africa, South America and Asia. And international production exceeded domestic production by about 15 tonnes last year. But as well as being the world's biggest producer, China is also the world's biggest importer of gold. It's hard to get precise import figures, but we do know that, for example, via Hong Kong alone, over 6,000 tonnes has entered the country since 2000. So if you add that to cumulative gold production since 2000, you get a figure of 13,200 tonnes. Whether imported, mined or recycled, most of the gold that enters China goes through the Shanghai Gold Exchange, the SGE, including the gold imported from Hong Kong. So SGE withdrawals, for which we do have numbers, can act as something of an approximation for demand, and it is possible to get numbers for SGE withdrawals. Since 2008, roughly 20,000 tonnes have been withdrawn from the SGE. Then we have to add in all the gold held in China, whether as bullion or jewellery, prior to 2000. And the World Gold Council estimates a figure of 2,500 tonnes in privately held jewellery. If you add domestic mining and official reserves, you arrive at a figure of about 4,000 tonnes. Now, Nick Laird of Gold Charts Are Us, one of the world's leading gold data experts, has cobbled it all together to produce this chart, which shows cumulative gold held in China to be around 28,911 tonnes. I've spoken to numerous analysts, Ross Norman, Bron Suchetsky, formerly of the Perth Mint, Koos Janssen, and they all arrive at similar estimates. In addition, there is gold entering China that is not accounted for by SGE withdrawals. Ross Norman points out that the People's Bank of China, the PBOC, likes to buy 12.5 kilo gold bars. They don't trade on the SGE. Also, the PBOC often uses dollars on exchanges in London, Dubai and Switzerland, while the SGE sells its gold in yuan. The army too owns gold and doesn't have to declare its purchases. Remember, there are many state agencies on top of the army and the central bank which buy gold. There's the State Administration of Foreign Exchange and China Investment Corporation, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, to give you two examples. So how much of all that huge hoard is state-owned? 40%? 50%? 60%? But at 50%, the implication is that China owns roughly 14,500 tonnes. That is 1.8 times more than the US. Now, it may be that only 20 or 30% of that gold is state-owned. I find that unlikely. But even if that's the case, it still owns more than the US. And China has been famously encouraging its citizens to buy gold since 2008. And the SGE has actually stated that only consumers buy gold over exchange. But it almost doesn't matter. This encouragement to buy gold, as one of my readers resident in China reported to me, kicked off a frenzy of laundry as China's citizens rushed to exchange the hordes of huqi cash they'd built up. In his local bank in Shanghai, he said, in 2009, he was standing behind a Chinese bloke who was unlocking bundles of euros, US dollars, Singapore dollars, Swiss francs in exchange for 5-kilo gold bars across the counter. Gold ownership in China is registered, so the government knows how much its citizens have. But it's commonly thought that should Beijing invite private holders of gold to support a major government currency initiative by pledging their gold as a kind of war bond, then there would be a 99% pickup. The vast majority of Chinese trust their government, especially when it comes to returning China to the top of the world. And that means a considerable amount of extra gold can very quickly be mobilized to participate in whatever Beijing is planning. Chinese gold holders don't have the same mistrust of government held by Western gold bugs. The party's seen as a good housewife to the nation. But the disruption it would cause means there's no way China can declare such large official holdings, not yet anyway. There'd be an unwanted surge in both the yuan and the gold price. The government's $3.2 trillion of US dollar foreign exchange reserves would be devalued. And to declare that much gold would be a direct challenge to American supremacy, which China is, I don't think, yet ready for. Parity first, then supremacy. So for now, they follow Deng Xiaoping's doctrine of we must not shine too brightly until everything is ready. President Trump wrong-footed the Chinese, and that and COVID, the great accelerator, may have brought schedules forward. The Chinese president, Xi Jinping, is known as a man of destiny, and he may want the great ascension to happen on his watch. But backing its money, if only in part with gold, as empires on the rise are wont to do, would give China great credibility in a world awash with money printing.
You know, one of the richest men in the world, Hugo Salinas, from Mexico, he had proposed and he had talked to some leaders in Mexico about backing the peso with Mexico's huge stores of silver. When they started talking about that, Lindsey Graham and the rest of the United States, including Trump, said that that would be an act of war. I wonder, do you understand what I just said? Mexico citizen Hugo Salinas, Mexican, and some of the leadership of Mexico started talking about using Mexico's huge, because Mexico has huge silver mines, and they have huge supplies of silver. And they started thinking about, because the peso was fluctuating in such a way, you know, and they were thinking about trying to bring online the peso being backed by its silver holdings and silver mines. And the United States took that as a threat to its national security. You know that? You can Google this. As a matter of fact, you can read some of it about, what were the keywords? And this is in the Mexico Daily Post. And it says, initiative to monetize peso with silver in Mexico. You can use those words, initiative to monetize peso with silver in Mexico. And that is from the Mexico Daily Post. And also, if you go to King's World News and you search it, or you can search it through Google, about how they were talking about making a peso backed by silver. And the United States said that would be a threat or an act of war or something like that. I'm serious. So to show you that the empire has no clothes, from whether it be the United States, the UK, or France, even when Germany, a NATO ally, requested its gold back, for the life of me, why would Germany have to keep its gold in France? France said that at first France didn't want to return it. Then France said, we'll give you back the gold. It wasn't a lot of gold. And France said it's going to take 5 years for us to give you back that gold. 5 years for a few tons of gold. 5 years. That lets you know that they didn't have it. And what they were doing was leasing some of the gold out, just like the United States and just like the UK. And what the world is quickly finding out is that the empire and the emperor no longer has any clothes. And we're watching the empire run around the world naked, roughshod with the gun at everybody's throat. Everybody's the problem. Everybody's belligerent. Everybody's a threat to global stability, except the man that's parking the warships off other people's coasts, except the person that is threatening to bomb and initiate war against other people. Everybody else who is at home, minding their own business, trying to do what's in the best interest of their constituents, their citizens, and their national interests, are threats. It's not the ones who have bases around the world, who stock those bases with bombs, planes, radars, ammunition, artillery, warships, and all of that stuff with tanks. Those are not the belligerent ones that are thousands of miles away. It is the ones who are in their own land, in their own neighborhood, that are the insurgents, the threats, the terrorists, the militias, who are belligerent and illegitimate. And it is America, Great Britain, and NATO, the ones who are keeping the peace and trying to provide for humanity and global security. If you believe that, I want to sell you this house that just grew on my toe, and it's only $600,000, and it's a 30-bedroom mansion. If you believe that foolishness. On that note, I thank each and every one of you for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on social media, anywhere on the globe. This platform is your platform for education, elevation, and empowerment. This is the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your brother, your host, and your friend, Rashid. Know that I love you if you love truth, but know that the true and living God will always love you better. Until we next meet again, remember, do good to others, not because people are watching, but because it's the right thing to do. Remember to treat others as you would have them to treat you. That's a golden rule. If you love God like you say you do, implement the golden rule. On that note, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Hey, mama, your baby boy Doug, I love you more than life itself. I'm out of here. Thank you, everyone.